Thanks a lot. And thanks to everyone who's joined us for this webinar. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. My name's John. As Gemma said, I'm the Community Director at Octopus Deploy, and joining me is the lovely and vivacious Adam, who's going to be, he and I are going to be talking a little bit about modern deployments with Octopus today. How are you, Adam?
Yeah, really good. I'm glad to be back doing webinars. It's been a couple of years, and then finally get to do a webinar with yourself, John. So I appreciate you staying up late and joining on my time zone.
And look how modern the webinar stack has gotten now. We have these emojis now in our webinar platform, which is fantastic. So as Gemma mentioned, please feel free to reach out, let us know if you have any questions throughout the webinar. We will take breaks during our webinar to answer any questions you have live on anything you see here or anything that you have any questions about Octopus in general. Happy to answer them as well. So with that, let's get started, Adam?
Yeah, let's do it. I think just going back to what you said about the new platform, I think we're off to a good start here. I've managed to share my screen. I've clicked to the next slide. It's all positive so far.
Perfect.
So yeah, let's kind of give people a rundown of what we're going to do today. I know you kind of alluded to what we're going to talk about. So we're going to give you there's going to be some total Octopus newbies on the call on the webinar today, I assume. People have never heard of Octopus. There's going to be some existing Octopus users on, hopefully. So we're going to start off with an Octopus Deploy overview. We're then going to jump into GitHub Actions, kind of show you some of the amazing work John and his team did with the GitHub Actions integrations with Octopus Deploy. Then we're going to jump into Octopus Deploy. We're going to configure some environments, projects for the deployment process, and we're going to actually deploy out a .NET Core application to Azure Web Apps. But first, actually, I've actually probably mixed those two points up. We're going to create the Azure Web App with Terraform first as part of the deployment process, and then deploy out to the Azure Web App. And then we're going to wrap that up at the end and kind of show you how you can configure all that through, again, using some of John's great work that he did with the Terraform provider. So a lot to get through today, John, but hopefully some really good content.
I have all the confidence in the world. We'll be able to get through it. Don't worry.
Cool. So, yeah, like I said, let's go through an overview of Octopus Deploy. So Octopus Deploy is, for anyone who doesn't know, it's a post-build tool, and it's going to kind of pick up where your CI server, your build server finishes, and deploy out your artifacts, whether that's a NuGet package, a zip, a container image. Deploy that out to anything that's could be a Windows, Linux machine, Azure Web App, all the way through to container orchestration technology, Kubernetes, ECS, Azure Container Service. The list just goes on now, John, doesn't it? It's just more to learn every single day. So yeah, just kind of highlighting what's on screen right now. We've got a team writes code, checks that into source control. The build server picks that up, might run some unit tests. From there, where Octopus fits in, we push those packages out to Octopus Deploy. And then Octopus Deploy kind of handles that deployment out to your infrastructure. So yeah, looking forward to kind of getting into it now, John.
Yeah. So I mean, a lot of people talk about this a lot. I mean, I think a lot of people look at the pipeline that they build out and they think about it just as far as the CD is concerned, and then deployment. I'll worry about that later. But it's really, really important that you think about deployment because there's a lot of complexity that goes into it, especially when you consider things like multi-tenanted deployments, variety of targets, deployments that have to occur at various stages. These are all the things that Octopus handles for you, and this is why you use and should consider a tool like Octopus.
Yeah, you've just touched on that. That's something that I was talking about. I was at KubeCon, as you know, last week, doing lots of little demos of Octopus Deploy, and I think probably my biggest, favorite thing about Octopus is doesn't just deploy Kubernetes. It doesn't deploy to Windows or Linux. It can deploy anywhere essentially, and as you said, deployments get complex. I think we've pretty much nailed down the CI part of things now. But when you're deployed on-premise and in the cloud, different infrastructure, it can get complex pretty quickly. Cool. I'll jump over. So while I go through a little run through of configuring Octopus in a few minutes, if you want to follow along after the webinar's finished, it might be a little too quick during the webinar. A couple of things you'll need is an Azure subscription, an Azure Service Principal, some GitHub credentials, because we're actually going to store our Octopus deployment process in a Git repository. And what I'll do after the webinar, we'll share this link out, which is going to give you access to the repo that I'm using today. Oh, cool. I want to jump straight into GitHub Actions, John. So before we can start building out our deployment process in Octopus, we need some artifacts pushing from our build server into Octopus Deploy, and we're going to use GitHub Actions for that today. And I think the reason I chose GitHub Actions, John, is we do work really well together, Octopus and GitHub Actions. But for me, it's just how easy I can get up and running with GitHub Actions. I don't have to install a server. I don't have to get Docker up and running. I can just log into GitHub, start creating an action, and I'm up and running in minutes. And we'll talk about it in a second. We've got all the first-class integrations now for Octopus Deploy and GitHub, and I know you could probably talk for a long time on those GitHub actions that you help build.
I won't. The general summary is we've got 10 actions now in the marketplace, ranging from creating deployments, deploying obviously to your infrastructure, waiting on server tasks, running runbooks, all that sort of stuff is all there in the marketplace, and you can find it just by searching for Octopus.
Yeah, what I'll do, I'll give people an idea of what that looks like in just a second. So we have our repo here. So we're going to be deploying out our fictitious application, random quotes. I promise it's a very basic application. There's nothing fancy to it, but hopefully you'll see this up and running at the end of this session today. We've got the random quotes here. We'll probably delve into this a little later on as well to look at some of the things that are actually in this application. What I'm going to do is jump into my single GitHub action that I've built. Again, I've tried to make this as simple as possible, John, purely because I'm not probably an expert on GitHub Actions. So I've kept it nice and simple. What we've got here is we're doing a build of the .NET Core application. We're setting a version number for us to use later on in the pipeline. So we build a project, do a publish, and then we're using a couple of the integrations that me and John mentioned a second ago.
Yeah.
First of all, we are packaging the published binaries into a zip file. We're giving it a package ID here, a version, specifying where to actually look for these binary files, and the base path of that. Once we package that as a zip, we then need to get that over into Octopus. And it's probably worth saying at this point, you don't actually have to post the package to Octopus if you've already got an external feed such as Artifactory. You can push your packages to Artifactory and Octopus can pick them up from there. So yeah, we can see there from the last step there, we're actually pushing that over to Octopus. I have set a couple of environment variables here. So to integrate with Octopus and GitHub Actions, all you need is your Octopus server URL, which you'll see in a second when I jump into Octopus, an API key, and an Octopus space. But yeah, I said I would kind of show you the marketplace. So there's plenty more actions than what I've seen. I know you've certainly built a lot more since I last used it a year ago.
Yeah, so one of the recent updates that we did for GitHub Actions, for those folks who are using GitHub Actions, you may not be aware that we released version 3 of our collection of actions, and we're utilizing a new API in Octopus now called the Executions API. And based on our telemetry, you should see anywhere from a 40 to 60% improvement in the performance of these action workflow runs, which reduces the amount of minutes you have to consume, obviously, with GitHub Actions runs, which is great. So we have new actions for things like doing a tenanted release, doing an untenanted release, creating zip archives, NuGet packages, all that stuff. And so you can basically compose your workflows inside of YAML, which is what you saw Adam showing you there. And then the nice thing about these actions in the V3 releases, they're also composable. So they actually have output parameters as well. If you're at all interested, you can take a look at the output parameters of them and then perform conditional switches basically inside of your YAML based on those outputs.
Yeah, I've used that in a different project. I'm kind of kicking myself now, so I could have showed those off in this demo. I do have one that's actually up and running, so I might jump while the actual action's running. I might jump into that, kind of show you a kind of finished pipeline. So yeah, we've got some down here like create release. So if you want to kind of configure all your deployments in Octopus, but have one pane of glass where you see the build, the push of the packages, and the deployment all in one screen. So from the GitHub Actions, you can create and deploy releases from here with the integrations. And I find it very easy to kind of follow along with these actions as well. You know, jump into create release, John. I can take a copy and paste of this. So I'm still a UI man. So when it comes to actually writing things as code, this is really helpful for me getting up and running.
Yep, that was intentional on our part when we built those.
Yep. So what I'll do, I want to kick off this action before I jump into Octopus. I've got a manual trigger. I'm going to run that workflow. And we'll just give this a second, make sure this actually kicks off. Live session, John. Something always goes
that's fine. Actually, just an interesting side point. If anyone's at all interested on how to do this with GitHub Actions, you'll notice in there it says workflow_dispatch. This is how you can perform manual triggers in GitHub Actions. You just add that as an event inside of your workflow, and it will allow you to run your workflows manually.
Yeah, I'll quickly show that's a good point. Yeah, we can see that down there. I've just got workflow dispatch. It gives you that ability to then just run that manually. I think this is really handy when you first start building out the pipeline. So not every time you merge, it starts running. I'll just go back in to actions. Yeah, we can see that's up and running now. I'll just make sure that's running.
So the other thing that we did with our actions, we made sure we logged a lot of stuff. So you can drill into any one of those action runs, particularly ones for Octopus Deploy, and see everything that's going on inside of there.
Oh, that's all. I don't think it's uploaded the logs just yet. So we'll come back to this. Let this run through, and we'll. Oh, so there we go. We actually I think we're up and running already. Let's go back into that. It has run. It's not uploaded the logs yet. Sometimes it does that in GitHub Actions. So yeah, we'll come back to we'll come back to that in a second. I've gone a little bit too quick there. So what we'll do now is we'll jump into Octopus, and we're going to follow this kind of getting started tutorial, which is really simple, really speeds up getting your first project deployed out through Octopus. And when we refer to a project in Octopus, kind of your application, it could be a microservice, a monolithic application, or off-the-shelf application. You know, you want to deploy Artifactory through Octopus, you can do that, and that's going to be a project in Octopus. But what I'll do first, John, I'll check the library. Yeah, so we can see there the GitHub action we just ran. It's built and it's pushed our package into the Octopus repository, and we'll be using this package to deploy to Azure Web Apps very shortly. One thing I'll also do, John, I may as well cover off the stuff that I've already included. So I'm going to jump into infrastructure. So we're going to be interacting with Azure today, and Octopus gives you the ability to save accounts for Azure, AWS, Kubernetes, and I've already included an Azure subscription account. And what that is allowing you to just create an Azure service principal in Octopus that you can save it in there and can be used throughout your deployment process. And on top of that, if I go into configuration and jump into Git, I do have some Git credentials. I won't be able to see those right now, so I'll jump back into the dashboard. Yeah, so John, I think we're ready to start building out the application.
Yeah, this is the fun part. So you've built your project, you're ready to go, you've got your package, and now you're ready to define your deployment process. And the way we typically do that is by creating a project, and that's where basically all life starts from the Octopus perspective.
Yeah, and when I did a few of these one-on-one webinars a few years ago. Now you may have seen them. And this was kind of really before Terraform and kind of configuration really kicked off. And what you used to do, if I go to infrastructure, you can add a number of different deployment targets to Octopus. Yeah, whether that's a Windows machine, Linux. We still have Mac. We have Mac on there. I don't know of a lot of Mac deployments, but it's there. We have different services on Azure, AWS for ECS, Kubernetes, and we have some other couple of niche deployment targets offline package drop. Yeah, if your server that you deploy to is air gapped and there's no chance of Octopus being able to communicate in with that server, you can create a deployment package using an offline package drop, which is really cool. And they all need to be put into an environment. So I used to create all these things manually. An environment is essentially going to kind of house all our deployment targets. So you may have some deployment targets for development, test, staging, and production. But we're actually going to do that through the tutorial. I really like this new tutorial. It makes it really simple to get up and running, which you'll see in just a second. So we're going to jump in and just start getting started. I'm going to give this a name. The application is random quote, so probably all guessed it. I'm going to go random quotes. And what I'm going to tick is use version control for this project. And what this means is all my deployment process and variables that I create, that will be stored in a Git repository. So we'll go ahead and hit save on that. First of all, it wants me to create some environments. And again, this is really cool, John. I can do this through the tutorial. I'm going to stick to the three basics. Normally, I do development, test, stage, and production, but I don't want to spend 20 minutes deploying to each one. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go development, staging, and production, and hit save. Let's skip this now. This just kind of gives you some audit in terms of how you intend to use this project in terms of kind of what language it is. You know, Octopus doesn't just deploy .NET. We've got Go, Java, Node.js. If you can build it, Octopus will be able to deploy it. So I'm going to go ahead. Just
I like that.
Hit skip. Yeah, that was. I think that was my first phrase I learned when I joined Octopus 3 years ago. So yeah, this is where we'll start configuring the Git repository. So let's make sure I jump over. And I'm just going to jump over to main. I seem to have lost the copy link. Here we go, John.
For the repository, that's under code. So I'll highlight it for you there, right there.
There we go.
Yes, there you go. See, this is the power of the new platform. I can actually put these little emojis on there. That's awesome.
Yeah. There we go. Thank you for that, John. See, when you do things live, this is what happens.
Yes.
You forget the most basic of things. So I'm going to jump off. What I've just done there, I've just taken a copy of this repo, put that in as a URL. I've already got some credentials stored, and the credential is just a GitHub token that gives me access, write and read access to that repo. Enable config code, and then I'll set a directory. I'm going to leave that as .octopus. I have already put that in there. I'll leave the branch as main. So test that, make sure that works first. Yes, that's what I like to see. And then configure. This is, John, this is where my summaries probably are very poor.
You type. That's fine, you type. So the reason why config-as-code integration within Octopus is so nice is because now you have a description in plain text that describes will describe your deployment process, which means you can go into it and make changes, and then those changes will sync with Octopus. This is the whole reason why we integrated Config-as-Code recently. And so what Adam has now integrated now is this backend repository into the project for this. And so now we can go about creating a deployment process, and that will be propagated as plain text.
Yeah, and that, I think so. We released Config-as-Code last year, and I've attended many events with Octopus, and this was the most asked for feature.
Yep.
So some benefits, so you can still store Octopus in a database. Octopus is backed by a SQL server. You can still store the deployment process in a database if you can't store it in a Git repository. One of the main benefits for me, John, or one of the best things the engineering team have done, I can use the UI and also use the code together. So if I just jump over back to my repository and go into Octopus, I haven't created the process yet. We'll check that in a second. But I can continue to use the code and use a code editor, Visual Studio Code, edit my deployment process. But I can also use the UI, and I have full control of switching between branches and creating new branches through Octopus. Yeah. So if you want to make a change to your deployment process but don't want to actually affect your production deployments, you can do that off another branch and then merge it in back to the main branch. So what I'm going to do, so before what it's asked me to do next, we want to start creating a deployment process. I'm going to jump in and start creating some variables first, John. So if I just jump back to my repo, and go to random quotes. Everyone has app settings. And if I take a look at our app settings here, we have a couple of app settings, the app version, the environment name, and it actually displays these in the website of random quotes. So we want to change these as we deploy through development, test, and production. And obviously, Octopus variables allows you to do that. So what I'm going to do, we can see here is app settings and app version. So Octopus allows you to directly manipulate these app setting files. So I'm going to go ahead. I do have these saved in a notepad file, John, because I will mistype something. So
that's fine. I'll talk to this. The reason why you want to do this. So, and again, I have to remind folks, if you have any questions at all, feel free. This is live, so if you have any questions at all, feel free to take advantage of the Q&A pane again. So one of the reasons why this is beneficial is obviously because sometimes you want to bump these numbers as part of a deployment, right? You don't want to do this in CI because CI is build, that's test. Where you really want to do this is in your deployment. And so you can change this as utilizing a sort of a format that we have described, and allows you to specify those. You can also scope those variables to different environments. You can scope them to a variety of other aspects as well if you wish. So these are basically ways in which you can define the various key values that you want to modify as part of a deployment.
Yeah, and thank you for covering that. There is different value types you can use. So if I change this type, I mentioned we had the Azure account already saved in the infrastructure tab. So I need to actually save this as a variable. So we can see here it's loaded up my Azure subscription. What this is really good for, store this as a variable, and we're going to use this in our deployment process. I can actually scope this to different environments. So if I have an Azure subscription for my development team, and I have one for my production team, whenever I'm deploying the deployment process in Octopus, it's always one deployment process for every single environment, but your configuration changes and you can use different account subscriptions, which is really handy, meaning you don't have to have one deployment process for the development team and one process for the production team. The same goes for these other little settings down here. I could had multiple values to this variable. So I could have dev here, add another value, have test. But what I've actually used, John, is a system variable. So Octopus comes built in with system variable values. So Octopus environment name, whenever I'm deploying to development, it's going to use the development environment name, and same for the app version number. And again, these will make a little more sense as we actually start creating and deploying these releases out. So I'm going to commit those. Okay, variables.
And for those folks who are interested, I've just posted the link to the system variables that we have in Octopus to the chat. So if anyone's interested.
Yeah, thank you, John. This is why I always copy and paste. I did a 101 webinar a few years ago, and I misspelt one of the 10 variables.
Oh, sure, happens.
The whole deployment process broke. So yeah,
coding's like building a souffle, right? One false move, the whole thing collapses. So there you
yes, exactly. So what we'll do now, we've created the variables. We've got our projects, we've got our environments. We've tied that into version control, and we now need to create the deployment process to actually deploy that that random quotes package out. But first, we need some infrastructure. So we're going to jump into the deployment process. We're going to start adding steps to our deployment process. Again, I'm going to use yes, I'm going to use a phrase that I used when I first started. It's essentially this is where you create your recipe for deploying out your application. So if I jump in and create process, I get to choose the steps I want to use as part of this deployment process. We have at Octopus lots of built-in steps that are built by our engineers. But I also think probably the coolest thing, John, is if I just jump down and just kind of show the community step templates. Yeah. All these different step templates are built by our community. And whichever, if there isn't a step for you in Octopus, you can build one and make that reusable across your instance. And if you're feeling confident enough, share it with the community as well. And it's good to see that, I suppose, from your perspective, John, knowing the community is active and thriving.
Yep. I love it. We're going to just answer a question here. We'll just take a second here. So Greg asks, we're running Octopus on-prem. All of our deployments are on-prem. What is involved in moving to Octopus in the cloud, be deploying on-prem? So the answer there is a bit nuanced. And the quick answer there is Octopus Cloud is an offering that we provide, which you can sign up for if you wish. However, the tricky bit there is obviously doing your deployment to an on-prem, which means you have to pierce firewalls. So this is where you have to basically install Tentacle to a variety of receivers. It is a bit tricky there. We do have guidance on how to set this up, but it will require obviously negotiating with your IT department to make sure that you can do that. One change that we made recently to Octopus was the ability to communicate via standard ports to Tentacle as well, which is a nice win, obviously, moving forward as well. So great question there, Greg. Did you have anything you want to add to that, Adam? Yeah, in terms of moving, so obviously you've probably already got an existing amount of projects in your instance. We do have a migration guide for you to follow. We did release an import-export tool functionality built into Octopus that gives you the ability to export all your projects via the API or through the UI and import them into your cloud instance. So it's relatively easy to migrate. I think what John was touching on regarding what network requirements that you may have. If you're currently using, let's say, the listing Tentacle right now, and you've opened up inbound firewall rules on those deployment targets, it might not be possible for you to do that from cloud, but you could switch over and start using our polling Tentacles if that was a safer option. Yep. Great question. Thanks, Greg. Cool. Thanks. Yeah, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to jump in. So, yeah, I'll show you the community step templates. First of all, we need some infrastructure. So, as part of the deployment process, I actually like to build the infrastructure, especially for development and test, because I can easily just spin that back down, John. So once I've finished in development, I can then just spin that back down. So what I'm going to do is go into our Terraform steps and run the apply Terraform step. Nice and simple, straightforward. I'm going to say build Azure Web App. I'll just run that on Azure Worker Pool. So this is where this Terraform is actually going to run. I have some workers attached to Octopus. Octopus comes with a built-in worker. The cloud comes with some dynamic workers. In my case, in this instance, I've got some workers. What a worker is just a
could be a Windows or Linux machine just processing tasks or running Terraform on behalf of the Octopus server. So if it looks a little confusing, if you do follow along with this, you'll just use the either hosted window or hosted Ubuntu servers. I just want to make sure I've got a free worker right now. So you do have the option of running it direct on the worker, or you can run it on inside a container on a worker, which is really handy. But probably a little bit more of an advanced feature for now. So we'll move on to the next part. So when you're running Terraform, whether you're running it's AWS, Azure, Google, or on-premise, you need some account credentials. I already added that variable into the variable screen, so I should see that there now. Cool. And use that. And we get to add our Terraform into this step. So we can have a file inside a package. So I could have built the Terraform into a package and just reference that in our package repository. What I'm going to do, I'm going to jump over. Here's what I did earlier.
The old Julia Child's method. Perfect.
Yes. Yeah, I don't think anybody in this session would like to watch me type out Terraform
HCL?
badly.
Yep.
Badly for the HCL for the next 10 minutes. Go to Octopus.
So for those folks who don't know, Terraform is a tool that does exactly what it sounds like. It basically stands up and can also destroy infrastructure. And by that I mean Terraform is a tool for terraforming infrastructure. Meaning, I like to reference Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, where they talk about the Genesis device, and it's terraforming a planet basically. And it's the same idea basically. Through commands issued through Terraform, you can stand up infrastructure, you can tear down infrastructure. And so the HCL that you see Adam typing here is basically defining what are called resources, and resources are those things that you want to provision through Terraform. And so in this case, we're provisioning stuff in Azure.
Yeah. This is the Terraform. We've got some variables here. I have prefixed these variables just to save us time on this session today. All we're doing here, we're building an Azure App Service plan, an Azure App Service. One thing just to note for the next step I'm going to add into Octopus, we've got these tags here. We've got the environment, the Octopus environment, and the Octopus role as well. So these are really important. We'll come back onto these in a second because we added a new feature into Octopus that allows you to add infrastructure to Octopus without actually having to add the infrastructure. Tag the Terraform, tag the infrastructure you build with Terraform, and Octopus will automatically pick this up. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and hit done. What Octopus also does in this step, you can see here, it finds all the variables, allows you to swap these out. So, for example, resource group, web app name, I could reference the variables section again that we went to earlier. What I've done for the web app name is webinar random quotes and the Octopus environment name using that system variable again. But you could go back, create variables in your variables group, which is probably best practice. But now, just to speed this along, I've just defaulted those values. So we'll check on that. Yep, that's all okay. I'm gonna actually cancel that. What I do is add the next step. Now we need to deploy. Once the infrastructure is up and running, now it's deploy out to Azure Web App. So I'm going to jump into the Azure Web App tab, and we've got a few options here. If we want to run an Azure script, basically really simple because we already have the account stored in Octopus. So if we want to just run a script without having to go find credentials, we already have that, and we can just run a script in Octopus. I'm going to jump and deploy an Azure Web App. I'll change that to deploy random quotes. Again, I'm going to run that on my different worker. So this is where we want to run this step on behalf of a particular role. So you can imagine in Octopus, you're going from deploying one application to, let's say, 100 applications. That all your infrastructure is going to have a different role, a specific role. There'll be one Azure Web App to do, maybe the API, one for the website. This is where we give it a descriptive role. So I want to give this.
Super descriptive.
Yeah.
Some random quotes
Web.
everywhere.
Random quotes dash web. So if I had a, if I had an API package to deploy as part of random quotes dash API, and this means it's only going to run this step for that part for that infrastructure. It's not going to run it across all infrastructure in, let's say, development. Add new role, and this way we're going to configure the cloud type discovery. And use that subscription again and commit that. So essentially what this is going to do, once I enable cloud target discovery, it's going to look inside my Azure subscription and find all resources that are tagged with the environment I'm deploying to and this particular role. So going back to what I showed you with the Terraform earlier, we tagged it with the environment and the role. So Octopus is also going to find, Octopus can automatically find that infrastructure and add it into Octopus.
Yep.
Choose the package that we want to deploy. We've got a couple of options here. We can deploy from a container image, or we can deploy zip, Java via our NuGet package. We've got a whole bunch of other options here, which we're gonna leave for today. But what I am going to do, John, is I mentioned we wanted to swap out some of those variables in the app settings file. We just need to tell Octopus in this step about that app settings file. If we just go back and just double check that. It was on I did a little run through before, John, just to make sure it was all working. I missed the S off and I was kind of wondering, why is this not working?
That's fine.
Just if I go to random quotes, yeah, we can see app settings.json.
There you go.
There we go.
Works for me.
Yeah. Commit that now. One last step. I'm going to add one last step in, John, and then we will be done. I just want to add a manual intervention step at the top of this deployment process. So manual intervention step in Octopus will halt the deployment process. Normally, we use this for approval or could be used for, end of development testing. Has it finished? Yeah, in fact, that's what we'll do, actually. Once, what we'll do, we'll just run this for development. No, we'll do approve. Got my amazing spelling there, John.
That's fine.
Some instructions. Please approve this deployment. Again.
We can do all we can around deployment. We just can't help you with spelling. Sorry, Adam.
Yeah. People have tried in the past. Choose a responsible team. So somebody's going to approve this deployment. So I'm going to do demo percenters. I'm doing something a little naughty in best practice deployments. I'm going to approve my own deployments, but I don't want this step to run for every single environment. So we have a whole bunch of different conditions that you could run a particular step for. So although we have one deployment process for development, test, staging, production, there are some nuances to that. One of them is configuration, which we set up through the variables, and also certain steps. So I want to run this for a specific environment and just put up. I'm actually going to just reorder that.
Put it above. Look at you showing all off the hot features we have there.
Yeah, that's down to me just forgetting that first step. That's all. There we go. I'm going to commit that. Updates.
So just to remind folks, we elected to have config as code or VCS underpinning everything. So that's why we have to commit everything and have messages as part of that. We're writing to a Git repository.
Yeah, and what we'll do, John, what we'll do first, we'll jump into that and take a look at what this looks like as code. So what I'm going to do now is finish this off. I'm going to create a release in Octopus. We've got a version number here. We can base the version number on a template. We can base it on the package version. I'm just going to go 1.0.0 for now. And what happens when I create this release? Octopus is going to snapshot the whole deployment process and all the variables. So no matter what, if somebody changes something on this main branch, on this deployment process, it's not going to affect this release and the packages included in this release. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save.
Now, at this point, you have to remember, you haven't deployed it yet. You've just snapshotted it yet. That's an important distinction that people need to know.
Yeah, that's right. And this is where we're going to go ahead and jump in and deploy to our first environment. So you can see here, the steps are included. We've got this nice little warning down here saying there are no enabled targets for this role. It's because we're building that as part of the deployment process. We can exclude steps in the process, and we can also choose to deploy later. And I'm not going to tick. I'll tick later, but I'm going to make sure I go back to now because I've done a number of demos where I've chosen later, and then kind of been sat there waiting for it to kick off. So I'm going to go now. I'm going to deploy that straight to development.
Fantastic. And there we go.
Yeah. So we can see that kicking off. Yeah. John, go on, John.
Oh, I was just going to say we have a question here from Sharik if we want to answer quickly, or you may have to approve step 1, obviously, for your.
No, so that's only there we go. Only for production.
Okay. Oh, that's right. Sorry, my apologies. Yes, you're right. I missed that part. So Sharik here asks, when deploy Octopus to a container using Azure Container Instance, the biggest negative I faced was that Let's Encrypt isn't available for containers. I was wondering if there was any future plans on addressing Let's Encrypt with containers. And then he continues on by saying, also, can better documentation be provided for SSL sidecars using Nginx with Octo Server? So a few things happening here. My understanding is that obviously I'll jump back to the previous question that was asked. So this is referring to Let's Encrypt here in conjunction with containers. My understanding with this is that it depends on how you're going about deployment. So if there are a variety of images that we provide, what are called worker tools that are available up on Docker Hub, they can help provide that capability. If you need a service like Let's Encrypt, that's something that you can obviously take advantage of. We do have a step in Octopus for Let's Encrypt as well, but it sounds like this is a very nuanced question. So possibly I don't mean to say we can't answer it here, but maybe this might be a good question for support. So maybe if you were to send an email to support@octopus.com, we could probably go into the nuances there. So there's another question here from, sorry, did you have something you want to add there?
Just a quick one. I'll jump into the community Slack. The community Slack, if you post this question in, there'll be maybe people in the community that'll be able to help out with this.
Okay. There was another question here from Holly, who asks, if we have ServiceNow integration set up, can the version information be sent back to that change request? I believe that is the case. I could be mistaken, but so for those folks who don't know, we actually do support ServiceNow as part of so you can set up the equivalent of a manual intervention step that is ServiceNow so a change request that comes from ServiceNow has to be approved in ServiceNow to allow a deployment to continue. As far as the version information being sent back to the change request, I believe, now I could be wrong, but I believe that information is sent back from Octopus. But again, sorry, Adam, go ahead.
Yeah, I was confirming. I agree. That's right. It does. So when you actually hit deploy, it creates the change request in ServiceNow, and in the title of the change request, you'll have the project name, the environment that you're deploying to, and the version information.
There you go. Straight from the horse's mouth. Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great questions. Sorry, continue.
Yeah.
Hey, you've deployed. Congratulations. There you go.
Yes, that went relatively quick. So yeah, I think I do want the stickers, so I might fill the feedback form in. But
there you go. Nice. Okay.
So yeah, so we close that off now. What we'll do is we'll just check. Jump into my portal. We can see here I've got my webinar random quotes. If I just kind of browse that, hopefully, what I'll do so I know we're kicking short on time, John. I'll just deploy this to staging as well. Just kind of give people an insight into what the production deployment looks like. Give this a second to load, let .NET Core boot up and start running.
It's Azure. Come on, it's the cloud. It's going to take a while.
Yeah, I'm too impatient. So yeah, there we go.
Hey, there you go. Nice.
Didn't replace my version number there though. I'll take a look at that. I'm not sure what's happened there. But yeah, we'll go back to that. Cool. So yeah, that's my application up and running. Again, what I've done now is just applied that straight out to staging. By convention in Octopus, you have your environment lifecycle. In this project's case, it's development, staging, production. Before I can deploy to production, I have to deploy to staging. Before I deploy to staging, I have to deploy to development. There's no hard and fast rule around that. You can configure that. You can have different channels in Octopus. One for your release candidates, one for your hotfix builds. So if you didn't want every release to go through development, stage, and production, just one straight to staging, you can create a channel to do that. While that starts deploying,
I mean, we don't have enough time to cover all this, but yeah, I was just going to say you can have tenants as well if you want to make sure that you have. Yeah. So anyway, sorry.
No, it's fine. I love getting onto tenants, and tenants in Octopus give you a way of deploying the same copy of the application more than once. So if you've got this release 1.0.0, let's say you deploy that as a SaaS product in Azure, but you've also got clients that require it to be installed on their data center. You don't want to be creating different deployment process for each client. You can use the same deployment process but take advantage of tenants. It's a little bit more of a complex feature, but certainly worth checking out. But yeah, while that's running, John, we'll just I did say I'd go back and I'd take a look at the configures code.
Yep. There you go. There's the OCL files.
There we go. We've got the deployment process now. So we can see all the things that we've built there in the UI. We can see that now as code, and I can go and edit in here. I won't be editing in here. I'm sure. What would you prefer, John? What's your actual preference? Would you still use the UI, or would you?
I like my text editors. I have years of typing, so I have the scar tissue to show for it. So I think I would prefer to use typing myself. But hey, to each his own.
It's a good mix then on the webinar. And we cater for both sides.
That's right.
So yeah, that's running through. We'll let that run through, and I did say I wanted to look at the Terraform provider. So just going back into the Octopus dashboard, we have the infrastructure deployment targets. We have environments. We've got the accounts. We've got the project itself that we've built. John, you spent a whole lot of time building out the Octopus Terraform provider, and I do have in this repo. So if I just go back one, go to configuration, and go to the main thing here.
Hey, there you
go. Because I've got the Terraform provider here to start building out that infrastructure that I've just created manually. You can just get up and running with this in a couple of minutes. But yeah, John, I know you spent a lot of time on this, and
I've included a link to the Terraform provider to the registry where it's located in the chat. You might wonder, why would I use this? Well, one reason is if you don't like clicking through our UI, as beautiful as it is, it can be very time consuming. And so to speed up that process, you can define the configuration for Octopus using a text file like this. And this is basically describing here a project group, an environment, and a lifecycle. And then you can utilize HCL in a combination of ways and replicate that very easily. So copy and paste, edit for taste. Everyone likes how to use that with text. So Terraform is extremely powerful, as I said before, and you can provision this all through the provider that we have. So what this means is you can use Terraform with Octopus. That's essentially what the provider does.
Yeah. Yeah, and if after this session you want to just spin this up, what we built today through the UI, you can come in and run this Terraform. Just fill out a couple of these variables and the environments that you want to create, and you'll be up and running within minutes. it's certainly getting traction at Octopus now. People starting to really love using the Terraform provider.
Yeah, we're almost at 1 million downloads, so a lot of customers are using it. And HCL is the most popular language on GitHub today. So a lot of people are doing infrastructure as code.
I didn't realize it was that many, but yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Sorry,
good
the fastest growing language. My apologies, not the largest, the fastest growing language on GitHub.
So cool. I know we're nearly short on time. So what I'll do, I'm just going to kick off the production deployment. We won't watch it run through completely. But what I did do is added that manual intervention step to only run for production.
Yep.
It's going to show that. I just want to show that off. We can see here it's halted the deployment. And again, we talked about ServiceNow a second ago. If you wanted to integrate with Jira Service Management or ServiceNow for your approvals, you can do that as well. This is a really good step if you don't have those tools. So what I'll do is going to halt the deployment. I'm going to assign to me again. Yeah,
should like approving your own PRs. What are we doing here?
Really shouldn't be doing this. This is
fine. Yeah, good.
And proceed. And what's going to happen now? It's going to continue to run and run that Terraform. And just lastly, on the Octopus kind of demo side of things, I'll just go to overview. If we take a look at staging, if you want to delve into logs to really work out what's happening in the deployment process, you get all this great information here, which is probably only used when it comes to troubleshooting, John. In my
it's opinion. All green, I'm happy. That's all I care about.
Yeah. If I see green in here, that's fine. But yeah, so this kind of wraps up. Hopefully, it gives people an idea of how easy it is to get up and running with Octopus, and hopefully we've got some time now just to answer any more questions, John.
Yeah, we have no in the queue, but we do have 6 minutes left in the webinar. If you have any questions whatsoever about Octopus, about setting up your CI/CD pipeline, Adam and I are happy to answer any questions that you have. In this demonstration, just to recap, we've shown you how to basically start off basically a deployment from GitHub Actions, where we started with a GitHub action running and pushing a package to Octopus. From there, Adam created a deployment process whereby he stood up some infrastructure in Azure using Terraform and then deployed across 3 environments. The last one being, of course, incorporating a manual approval, which he dutifully approved himself. So these are the sort of cheating things you can do, but we don't recommend it. But obviously, this speaks to the power of Octopus Deploy in terms of having repeatable, robust, and reliable deployments, which is the reason why you use a tool like this. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A. This is why we do these live. But yeah, Adam, any resources, anything you wanted to summarize?
Yeah, no, thank you for summarizing that. I think okay. I've just seen a question come in there.
More of a comment. Adding integration for Slack notifications would be great. We actually do have this. Unbeknownst. Yeah. So Slack and Teams integration are some of the most popular steps used by customers today. We have Slack notifications. So what this allows you to do, one example is, hey, deployment's finished. Send a notification to the team saying that's finished. So that's something that you can use as well. You can do this with Teams. You can do this with Slack. A lot of different ways you can do this.
Yeah, you can. These actually are community contributor steps as well. This is actually built, so some of the community steps are actually built a lot by my colleagues in the solution engineering team, the product team. So if it, it's probably worth mentioning as well, the community steps, they are reviewed by everyone at Octopus, and they're then kind of managed by the team at Octopus. So you can rest assured that any kind of community steps that goes into Octopus, it's all safe and secure.
Fantastic. Well, I think we've included all the links in the chat dialogue. So if any of you need to reference anything that Adam has shown during his demo, they're all listed there if you want. You'll find everything, obviously, starting in that repo, which is under the Octopus Solutions Engineering org. And any last details you want to call out, Adam, before we close out the webinar?
No, all good. I enjoyed that. Hopefully everybody learned something, and any existing users saw some of the new features of Octopus as well. So
fantastic. Well, on behalf of Adam and Gemma and the rest of us here at Octopus, I'd like to thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Great to see everyone from around the world joining us, and we will be doing many more of these in the future. Great to see the emojis interactions. And if you have any other suggestions for us, feel free to reach out. We're available obviously on the community Slack or on Twitter or any other socials that you'll find us. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Yeah, thanks everyone.